I think that delay and the pause, I would call it a pause in the financial pressure that we had really started in late 05, 06, and Stewart had spearheaded, was a strategic mistake, a major strategic mistake. Because I think on these issues, time and timing matter. And I think a few things. We had momentum in terms of financial pressure, and largely driven through the private sector reactions to Iranian behavior. And frankly, as we look at this pressure campaign, Iran's willingness to sort of help us along with greater control of the economy, for example, by the Revolutionary Guard Corps, which makes it a lot easier for Stewart and Treasury officials to go into a bank like UBS and Credit Suisse and say, do you really want to be doing business with the people who are engaged in not only the intelligence apparatus of this regime, but also their nuclear program? So there was already that momentum, and it was actually working. And I think that strategic pause was a mistake, in part because I don't think it was an either-or. I think the administration could have said, we're going to re-energize engagement. And by the way, I think the French, the British, and the Germans were surprised that we were saying in the new administration that we hadn't been engaging, because there were offers on the table. In fact, offers that were memorialized in the UN sanctions resolutions that we had passed. And so I think that pause was a mistake. Another reason it's important is the reason these measures have worked and why they're different than traditional trade-based sanctions that we've seen in the 80s and 90s is we're making an argument about the environment, the fact that the Iranians are not trustworthy, that they're engaged in particular types of conduct that are unacceptable, and frankly that are somewhat divorced from the political and diplomatic process. These are things that are bad in and of themselves for the international financial system. And so to pause all of a sudden in that campaign, you're in essence conceding that your policy is driven by politics and not the substance of that environment. The last thing I would say is, again, time and timing matters, because right as we were sort of in the middle of this engagement, or so-called engagement, or attempted engagement, you had the Green Movement, which really was, the Persian Spring was the start of the Arab Spring. And I think our inability to see the totality of the types of pressure and strategic nodes that were important to changing Iran's behavior were missed. And part of that was we had this either-or, very linear mentality to the strategy. And part of that had to do with the fact that we'd put this pressure campaign on pause. And I guess the final thing I would say, I'm passionate about this, I'm not sure who we were trying to convince. Because amidst the Iranian rejections of the entreaties and the engagement, we were also watching very closely the secret site at Qom, which we later revealed because the Iranians understood that we knew what they were doing. And so while we were doing this, while we had the strategic pause on the financial pressure, we knew all along that they were engaged in surreptitious and potentially problematic activity that ultimately would be a turning point in terms of how countries were willing to engage. And so I think that was a strategic mistake. And again, I think it points again to the importance of financial pressure as part of a national security perspective that's very important to have squarely in mind.
Stuart, you're known as someone and devoted to dealing with sanctions, tirelessly fighting for it. I mean, we've all seen that. But I put you on the spot a little bit here. I know that Michael Isikoff had talked to John McLaughlin, who said that at best the Iran sanctions were working a little bit. And I know we've joked. I was in Iran in December, and GM and Ford vehicles were easily available. The newest Dodge Charger was bragged about by concierge is available for rent. And that was just, iPhones, everything was there. And I know I guess the silver lining is the Iranian people want American products, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in one sense. But in all seriousness, what could we do more? Is this just as simple as China and oil, or what could we do more to make the sanctions effective?
Right. So, I'm not going to come up here and, after spending 5 years of my life trying to pressure Iran and start to argue against pressure. So I'm just going to leave Juan's views and answer your question.
By the way, I thought they should have unleashed Stewart sooner.
I do